In this code, line 10 establishes a path in the app that handles GET requests to the root path. When a user accesses the root path, the server responds by sending the file, index.html, from the same directory as the main script. The res.sendFile function is utilized to send the HTML file back to the user's browser for display. The app.post function controls incoming post requests to the root directory of the server. When a post request is made to the root directory, this function will be performed. The parameters are request and response, which are used to send a response to and from the client server. This function serves as a way to process the data sent in the request and generates a response accordingly. Next, we need to create two variables for the latitude and longitude coordinates. The variables, lat and lon, store the input from the HTML form we created earlier in string format. The expression req.body.lat input corresponds to the data entered into the latitude input field of the form. Subsequently, the console.log req.body.lat input statement is utilized to output this latitude data to the console, typically for debugging or display purposes. Start by assigning a variable called lat, set it equal to string, and pass in the values req, body, and lat input, separated by dot notation. Next, create a function to output the value of the lat input to the console. Ensure to repeat the same process for the longitude variable. To do this, you can simply copy and paste the code used for the lateral coordinates. Then you repeat the same process for the longitude coordinates. The next block of code involves building a URL to make requests to the OpenWeatherMap API, using certain parameters. Additionally, this is where you need to insert your secret API key to connect to the OpenWeather database repository. First, make sure you set the units to imperial. This will ensure that the temperature units will be shown in Fahrenheit. Next, you need to go to https://openweathermap.org, login, and then create and copy your unique key. To do this, locate the navigation bar on the top of the screen and click on your username, and from the drop-down menu click to My API Keys. Locate Create Key on the right-hand side of the screen, then create a new API key name. After naming your API key, click Generate, and you should be able to find your key on the left-hand side of the screen. Copy and paste this key into the variable API key in the JavaScript page in Replit. The last part of this section involves creating a URL for sending requests to the OpenWeatherMap API. You can include your own parameters, which can be located on the OpenWeather site. First, go to the OpenWeather site and locate the API button in the top navigation bar and click it. Then scroll down the page until you see Current Weather Data under Current and Forecast Weather Data Collection. Find the API Doc button and click it. On this page, you can find the JSON and XML format API response fields, which can be used to set the parameters in the URL. On the top of the page, you can find the documentation to make an API call using OpenWeather's domain name and parameters. Copy the API call URL from OpenWeather and use that URL as a framework to build the URL to query weather by GPS coordinates. To do this, you need to add the variables you created earlier, lat and lon. Additionally, you need to also make sure the query parameter is in double quotes. We'll walk through an example together. First, we are going to close the first parameter in the URL with double quotes. Then we add in the variable, lat. Next, we want to add the second query parameter and ensure it is in double quotes, and add the lon variable to the URL. Then add the units query parameter, ensure it's in double quotes, and add the unites variable to the URL. Finally, we have to include the app ID parameter and API key variable. which uses your unique API key to query data from the OpenWeather API site. Ensure to close the URL with a semicolon. Next, we'll examine some of the JavaScript objects required to display weather using GPS coordinates. For this assignment, remove the variable city because we are not querying weather by city. The other variables are required to display the weather conditions. Note that you can easily add different variables such as sea level, wind speed, cloudiness, and rain volume using the OpenWeather API documentation we showed you earlier. First, you need to go to the documentation and find the weather data you want to add. Using the documentation, you need to create an object which stores the variable and the corresponding value. This is where generative AI can assist you the most. You can use the demo code to provide AI with context to help you generate valid code. For example, you can copy and paste the list of constants from Replit and ask AI to create a variable for temperature. The last block of code uses the res.write function to deliver the HTML content to the response object, and the res.send function to send all the HTML content to the client server to be shown in the browser. In addition, there are also HTML header tags that are used to display the weather description and temperature. Finally, there are variables included in the headers that store the data to be displayed on the HTML page. In this exercise, we don't need the zip code because we are querying weather conditions by GPS coordinates, so you can delete that variable from the header tag. Finally, run the code to make sure it works. You can do this by clicking the Run button located on the top of the screen in Replit. On the right side of the screen is a window displaying the web view. You can click on the New tab button to open another window in your browser, which will go to the home directory by default. Google the GPS coordinates of a city of your choice. For example, Kahului, which is 20.8893 degrees north latitude and 156.4729 degrees longitude. After entering the coordinates, click the Go button and the page should load showing the weather conditions and the corresponding icon.